You better lawyer up because they're coming for you. Nancy, the only person that is not a suspect at this time is Hayden.
2:32 in the afternoon, Sunday, August 16th, the moment Hayden Panettiere was pronounced dead in an apartment that wasn't hers, in a city she'd arrived in 3 days earlier, 5 days before her 37th birthday. And then came the 4 words that were supposed to end it. No signs of foul play. That's what police said. That's what the coroner said. That's what the headlines said. Case closed. A tragedy. Nothing more. Except in the week since, a search warrant has been executed on that apartment. Detectives from the Violent Crimes Unit have been assigned. A narcotics investigator has been brought in. And on Wednesday, the Drug Enforcement Administration, a federal agency, joined an investigation that officially isn't even a criminal one yet. You don't send the feds to confirm nothing happened. So what changed? What did they find in that room? Nancy Grace built an entire broadcast around it. One object, one thing sitting beside her body when the first responders came through the door. And once you understand what it does and what it can't do, the phrase "no signs of foul play" starts to sound like something else entirely. 2 men were in that apartment. Both of them tried to save her. And what one of them reached for first is the reason federal agents are now involved. Stay with me. Because there's also a court hearing that happened 3 days before she died, and almost nobody has connected it to any of this.
Emergency responders arrived at an apartment complex in Greenville, South Carolina after a 911 call reported a person in cardiac arrest just before 2 p.m. on Sunday. Life support was performed, but actress Hayden Panettiere was pronounced dead at the scene.
Everyone is into response for cardiac arrest. Judson Mill Lofts, 701 Easley Bridge Road, apartment. Mr. 1, minute 29, responding.
Easley Bridge Road, overdose. CPR is in progress.
Hi, I'm Hayden Panettiere, and my new memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, is available now.
She wasn't supposed to be there. Hayden Panettiere was a California resident. The coroner's office confirmed she'd been staying temporarily at the Judson Mill Lofts on Easley Bridge Road, a converted textile mill on the edge of Greenville, brick and windows, apartments carved out of a factory floor. According to reporting on the Nancy Grace broadcast, she arrived on a Thursday afternoon. A former co-star from Nashville was performing in Greenville that Friday night. That was the reason for the trip. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoon, someone called 911. Dispatch audio obtained from a public broadcast feed captures responders discussing a possible overdose. CPR in progress. Authorities have never confirmed that an overdose actually occurred. That's important, and we'll come back to it. Emergency crews found her in cardiac arrest. They initiated advanced cardiac life support. It didn't work. 2:32. The next day, Monday, the Greenville County Coroner's Office performed an autopsy. The finding was narrow and specific. No signs of trauma were discovered that would have contributed to the death. No wounds, no marks, nothing physical to explain a healthy 36-year-old woman dying on a Sunday afternoon. Cause of death? Pending. Manner of death? Pending. Both. In the coroner's words, awaiting further investigation and the completion of additional studies, which is a formal way of saying we don't know yet. And the answer isn't in the body. Here's what makes this different from every other celebrity death you've clicked on. She told us, in advance, in her own words. 3 months before she died, Hayden Panettiere published a memoir called This Is Me, A Reckoning. Not a puff piece, not a rebrand, a reckoning. Postpartum depression, addiction, recovery, trauma, domestic abuse, and loss. She named the things most people in her position spend a career burying. She'd started acting before she could walk, a commercial at 11 months old, a soap opera role by 5. She described being pushed to summon tears on command as a small child by imagining her pet dead, and then, as she got older, having to imagine worse, darker, until she said she no longer knew where her character stopped and she began. There was the Golden Globe nominations, Heroes, Nashville, Scream, A bug's life. A career most actors don't get one of. And there was February 19th, 2023. The day her younger brother, Jansen, was found dead in his New York apartment at 28. The medical examiner attributed it to cardiomegaly, an enlarged heart coupled with aortic valve complications. She later said she became agoraphobic afterward. Stopped leaving. Stopped looking in mirrors. She has an 11-year-old daughter, Kaya, who lives in Ukraine with her father. And by this year, she was coming back. Book out in May, a film released in January, speaking publicly, on camera, about everything she'd survived. That's the woman. That's who was in that apartment. If you think a life like that deserves more than a 40-second news clip and a shrug, subscribe. Because this story is going to need someone still paying attention in October, and most channels will have moved on by Tuesday. Now the part almost nobody has put in the timeline. On Thursday, August 13th, 3 days before Hayden Panettiere died, a judge in Los Angeles County named Olivia Rosales denied a motion. The motion had been filed by Brian Hickerson. To understand why that matters, you need the history, and the history is a matter of public court record. On May 2, 2019, Hickerson was arrested by the LAPD on an allegation of injuring a spouse or girlfriend. Over the following months, the case grew. By July of 2020, he faced an 8-count criminal complaint stemming from incidents alleged to have occurred between May 2019 and January 2020. Panettiere obtained a restraining order that same month. On April 20, 2021, Hickerson pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts of injuring a spouse, cohabitant, girlfriend, or child's parent. The remaining 6 counts were dismissed. He was sentenced to 45 days in county jail. He served a portion of it with credit for time already served, along with 4 years of formal probation, 52 domestic violence classes, $500 in restitution, and a 5 years protective order. In her memoir this year, Panettiere wrote about one night when she says he beat her so badly she didn't leave the house for weeks. She wrote that she hesitated to go to police because she didn't want the public to know. This August, Hickerson went back to court. He asked the judge to reduce those 2 felony convictions to misdemeanors and to expunge them from his record. His filing stated he'd completed the terms of his probation. Prosecutors opposed it. Judge Rosales denied both requests. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office confirmed the ruling. That was August 13th. She died on August 16th, 3 days. And when responders arrived at that apartment on Easley Bridge Road, the 2 men there were Brian Hickerson and his brother Zach. I want to be extremely careful here, and I'm going to be careful about it more than once in this video. That timing is a fact. It is not evidence of anything. No one has connected those 2 events. No authority has suggested a link. It is simply true. It is on the record, and you deserve to have it. When Nancy Grace opened her broadcast on this case, she didn't lead with the timeline. She led with a pattern. Because she's seen this exact sequence before. Matthew Perry was found in a hot tub. No signs of foul play. It took a full investigation to establish that he'd been supplied a fatal quantity of ketamine. And 5 people, including 2 physicians and his own live-in assistant, ultimately faced charges. Michael Jackson. No obvious trauma. A doctor was convicted. Elvis Presley. No foul play. Grace's argument was blunt. In overdose cases, the crime is never at the scene. There's no weapon, no blood, no struggle. The answer is chemical, and chemistry takes weeks. So, no signs of foul play doesn't mean nothing happened. It means nothing happened that a first responder could see with the naked eye in the first 20 minutes. Her medical examiner guest, Dr. Thomas Coyne, said essentially the same thing in gentler language, that in these cases, the answer simply isn't present at the autopsy. Then Grace turned to Renee Rockwell, a veteran criminal defense attorney out of Atlanta whose specialty is narcotics cases. And Rockwell said a sentence that has been circulating ever since. I'm going to quote her exactly, because it's her opinion and not a finding of any kind. The only person that is not a suspect at this time is Hayden. Rockwell's point was procedural, Investigators pull devices, phones, tablets, ring cameras. They talk to everyone who came through that door. Assistants, drivers, cleaners, neighbors, partners. Not because those people are guilty, because that's the process. But Grace kept circling one thing, over and over. One object recovered from that room, Narcan. It was on the bed. Reported first by TMZ and referenced repeatedly across the coverage since, a used dose of Narcan lying beside her. Narcan is the brand name for naloxone. And naloxone does exactly one thing. It reverses opioid overdose. It does nothing for a heart attack, nothing for a stroke, nothing for cardiac arrest from any other cause. It is a single-purpose drug with a single-purpose meaning, and someone in that apartment reached for it. Which means before the paramedics arrived, before dispatch, before the coroner, before any of the 4 words that were supposed to close this case, somebody standing in that room had already made a diagnosis. Zach Hickerson has explained what happened, in his own words, in a statement to TMZ, and it deserves to be heard in full. He said they had tried to wake her from a nap in the living room when they noticed she was unconscious. Quote, "I immediately called 911 and Brian gave her Narcan. We then jointly performed CPR while 911 was on speaker until fire and EMS arrived." Read that again, because it cuts in 2 directions at once. The man who administered the Narcan is the brother of the man who called 911. They stayed on the line, they did compressions until the fire department came through the door. The police report also notes that Brian Hickerson showed responding officers the bag of medication Panettiere had been taking. And that same report states it is unknown whether she was using drugs or alcohol at the time of her death. That is not the behavior of people hiding something. It is worth saying plainly, and I'm saying it plainly. But it is also the reason this case did not close. Because Narcan on a mattress is a statement. It says somebody believed they knew what was happening. And investigators now have to answer a question that has nothing to do with the 2 men who called for help. Where did it come from? This is where the last 7 days get very loud. According to the Greenville Police Department's redacted incident report, detectives with the Violent Crimes Unit and the Coroner's Office are actively investigating. A search warrant was executed at the apartment. And there's this. The courtesy officer at Judson Mills advised police that closed-circuit camera footage is available. Footage showing all 3 individuals arriving at and leaving the property. Sit with that one. Somewhere in an evidence room in Greenville, there is video of the last days of Hayden Panettiere's life. Who came, who went, when, and nobody outside that investigation has seen a frame of it. Then, according to her mother, a narcotics investigator was brought into the police probe, and on Wednesday, the New York Times and ABC News reported, citing sources familiar with the matter, that the Drug Enforcement Administration had joined the investigation. Greenville City Police remain the lead agency. The DEA is assisting. The DEA does not investigate deaths. The DEA investigates supply. For its part, the police department has been careful and consistent. It says it's handling this exactly as it handles every death investigation, and it won't be doing media interviews. Its statement lays out the sequence. The department works with the coroner's office, receives its findings, reviews the facts and evidence, and then decides whether a criminal investigation is warranted. Not yet. Then. Leslie Vogel is 70 years old. She buried her son 3 years ago. She buried her daughter last week. She was also estranged from that daughter, and she has now explained why. Speaking to Entertainment Tonight on August 20th, Vogel said, "Although my daughter and I were estranged, it was not for lack of care or love. It was due to the involvement of a toxic individual." She continued that Hayden became involved with the wrong person, and although her family tried to extricate him from her life, we were unable to be successful. Vogel did not say who she meant. I want that stated clearly because it's the single most important sentence in this section. She named no one. She has not accused any specific person of anything, and neither am I. What she gave was a grieving mother's belief about someone she never identified. On the narcotics investigator joining the case, she added, "It leads me to believe there are still questions surrounding what happened. And I think we are all looking for answers." Brian Hickerson's attorney, Sloan Ellis, issued a statement on August 20th. It reads in full, "Hayden's death remains under investigation, and it is important to allow that investigation to proceed. As has been publicly reported, police confirmed there were no signs of foul play. Out of respect for Hayden's loved ones and the ongoing investigation, there will be no further comment at this time." That's a fair statement. It's accurate on the facts as they currently stand, and it's on this record alongside everything else. Everything now waits on a laboratory. Dr. Coyne explained the timeline on the Grace broadcast. An in-house toxicology lab can sometimes return preliminary results in about a week. But most medical examiners' offices send their samples to outside labs. And depending on volume and on whether unusual compounds are involved, it can stretch to 8 weeks. Fentanyl has analogs. There are novel synthetics that require specialized testing. The coroner's office has said up to 8 weeks. The autopsy was August 17th, which puts the answer somewhere in mid-October. Until then, this case exists in a strange kind of limbo, an official finding of nothing suspicious, running in parallel with a search warrant, a violent crimes unit, a narcotics detective, security footage, and a federal drug agency. Both of those things are true at the same time. That's not a contradiction. That's just what the early stage of one of these looks like. Before the close, if you want to be here when that toxicology report actually lands, rather than reading a headline about it 3 days late, subscribe. She spent 36 years being covered by people who left the second the story got slow. Don't be that. Let me be completely straight with you. There is no cause of death. There is no manner of death. No one has been named a suspect by any authority. No one has been charged with anything. Police have said there were no signs of foul play during the initial response and investigation, and that remains their position today. Brian Hickerson has not been accused of any crime in connection with Hayden Panettiere's death. Not by police, not by the coroner, not by the DEA, not by her mother, who named no one at all. His prior convictions are a matter of public record, and they are not evidence of anything here. Zach Hickerson called 911. Brian Hickerson administered Narcan. They performed CPR together until help arrived. Whatever else is true, that is also true. Everything else in this video is a question, because right now, questions are genuinely all that anyone has. She was 5 days from 37. She had a book out, a daughter waiting, a career coming back, and somewhere in an evidence locker in Greenville, South Carolina, there is video of her last 3 days that nobody outside that investigation has watched. The answer to this one isn't in a police report. It's in a lab.